We must shift now and deal with the consequences later. And inadvertent means unintentional and reckless. You have no clue what's going on. And unintentional and prudent, now we know how we should have done it. So these are the 4 quadrants. Now where do you see yourself, your team? In which quadrant do you see? Again, this is another mirroring technique where you can see your face. Prudent. Deliberately prudent or inadvertently prudent? Deliberately prudent. Okay. So again, as a Scrum Master, you have to keep an eye on the accumulation of technical debt. I know that all the Scrum Masters will not know it, but asking questions and keeping a note of everything will really help us. Okay. Keep an eye on technical debt, accumulation of technical debt. If it accumulates beyond certain point, it will be really, really problematic. Okay. So the next one is value of engineering practices.
So
allocate some capacity every sprint to pay back the technical debt. That is. Oh, no. So let us say 10% of the capacity every sprint for technical debt. Yeah. So the next, the pair programming. Did anyone try this in the past? This is XP engineering practice, pair programming. So what does the pair programming means? A junior developer and a senior developer work on one common code, and they work together on one common code, and then the code is constantly being reviewed when it is getting developed. And the developer who writes the code, we call him as a navigator. The person who observes it is called an observer. And they frequently switch the roles. Let us say every 30 minutes, they switch these roles. So through this, we are trying to bridge the competency gap between a senior developer and a junior developer within a team. So that is first use case of a pair programming. So one is the code is constantly being reviewed, and we are trying to bridge the competency between a senior developer and a junior developer. Use case 2. We not only pair people who are developers with developers, but we also pair developers with testers, testers with UX, UX with architects, business analysis with the testers. So we constantly pair people with cross skills in order to develop T-shaped skills within the team. That is what we do. Nowadays, if you ask any manager, this manager will say that we don't have enough people in your team. I mean, you can go and ask anyone. Everyone say that we don't have enough people. The reason of not having enough people is you are very specialized. So that is why we say that we want some generalization to develop, and we want to develop the T-shaped skills. So that is why we say that, hey, can you please try to work or contribute outside your specialization? That is the second use case, developing cross competencies within the team. 3. In an on-site offshore model, the on-site will always complain that the offshore produces a crappy code. So if you have such kind of situations, what we always do is we want one on-site developer and offshore developer pair up and work on one common code so that they do a perfect handshake between them and then complete on that code. So, and there is a collective ownership among themselves on one single user story. Through those, these escalations will go down to a drastic extent. So use case 1, code is being reviewed and we are bridging the competency gap. That is use case 1. 2, we are developing cross competencies. 3, on-site offshore collaboration through pair programming. So these are the 3 use cases of pair programming. Very, very helpful. Number 2, test-driven development. Anyone tried this? Testing the code. How many of you will believe that I can test the code even before it is developed? You believe that? How many are testers here? You are also a tester, right? She is a tester. He is a tester. Is the only tester. One more tester was there. You are the tester. Did you ever think of testing the code even before it is developed? No. Difficult to implement. Okay. So let us say I write a unit test case. Test. Add 1, 2, 3. And write the code. Write the test script. and then write a method, add 1, 2, 3, and then run this test script. Because there is no code here, this test script will fail. And then start writing the code and run it multiple times. It will fail multiple times. Keep modifying this code until this test script passes. And then refactor this code. What is refactoring? Changing the structure of the code without changing its behavior. So fail, pass, refactor. So these are the 3 steps of test-driven development. Testing the code even before it is developed. Fail, pass, refactor. Testing the code even before it is developed. And if you want more information about test-driven development, there is a book called as a Clean Code. This is a good book. So you have to read this book. Clean Code. The next one is collective code ownership. So collective code ownership can be achieved by 2 means. One is pair programming or pairing. 2, we call it as swarming. Pairing and swarming. What does the swarming means? So yesterday we talked about this patterns, right? Sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. And if you correct them here, they go here. We move away from this and we say that this is our new pattern, design code test. It is a rugby pattern where multiple people attacking user stories rather than one person sit on the whole user story for the whole sprint. And the last 2 days, he goes on an unplanned leave and no one knows what is happening. Okay, so now let me demonstrate how do we do it. User story 1, user story 2, user story 3, user story 4. And let us say I have an 8 people team, 4 developers, 2 testers, 2 UI, 1 architect or whatever it is, or 1 business analyst, whoever it is. So I use this concept of WIP. Anyone know what is WIP? Work in progress. Do you know where did you get this concept from? So we get this work in progress from a mathematical relationships called as a queue systems, queuing theories. In that queuing theory, there is something called as a Little's law. Little's law talks about average arrival rate divided by average queue length. So that is why try to keep the WIP limit very small. Let us say 2. So 2 means at any point of time, not more than 2 user stories in progress. And then out of this lot, 2 developers, 1 tester, 1 UI work on this. 2 developers, 1 tester, 1 UI, 1 BA work on this. Where multiple people attack user stories rather than one person sit on the user stories. So that way you develop this code, collective code ownership where multiple people swarming into user stories. Otherwise what happens, and through this swarming, there is one advantage. We try to prevent this island of knowledges. What does this island of knowledges means? One person has all the knowledge, one person is a hero in the team, other persons are all zeros. Okay, so we wanted to prevent island of knowledges where we don't want people with too much of knowledge and we want people with very less knowledge. So that's why we usually do this swarming where people learn together on job. Okay, so that is what we usually do. At any point after this story is fully done, you go to the next user story. That's what we were trying to do. So this is a swarming behavior where multiple people, so let us say I have 2 developers, one developer can work on the back end, another developer can work in the middle, and UI work on the UI screens, and tester also. The way how in reality we used to implement is after the sprint planning, these 4 guys get into a meeting room, and then the UI draws a design on the board, and a developer write all the pseudocode on the board, the database developer write the database tables on the board, and then tester writes all the test cases on the board. Now everything is visible to everyone. Test cases are no longer secret for developer. Test cases are only discovered after they develop the code. And I mean, that I don't know where did we get this weird practice from. Test cases are always secret to developer. So test cases are also made visible to the developer so that the developer know what he is going to get tested on. Okay, so these are very disruptive practices. Through this, you try to bridge those knowledge gaps across multiple team members. And the next one is refactoring, changing the structure of the code without changing its behavior, and then continuous integration. Now, what value do you see in promoting these practices? What value do you see in promoting these practices? One, quality. There is a lot of learning among the team members. There is a lot of team cohesion happens because every team member will get an opportunity to learn something new and improve. And there is no dependency on one individual person. And then, what? Team morale, team motivation, removing the island of knowledges, and then developing cross competencies. These are all several advantages of these practices. That is why, as a Scrum Master, I recommend you to promote these practices when the team is mature. That is why Scrum Master role is not easy, according to me. Okay, so with that, let's go for a break and we come back and continue this. Yeah.
അല്ല അതപ്പം നമ്മളിങ്ങനെ കോഡില്ലാതെ പുള്ളി പറഞ്ഞ ടെസ്റ്റ് ആയിട്ട് ബ്യൂട്ടിഫൈ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് കോഡ്